All right. Thanks so much, Lucy. And thank y'all for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm from Memphis. So of course I have a lot of connections to University of Memphis. So I'm always happy to join the community and get to meet members of the community and student leadership. This is a great program that y'all have. So when I talked to Lucy, she talked to me about maybe talking to y'all about some mindfulness and how art or creativity might relate to mindfulness, as well as, self-awareness and self-reflection and of course leadership. So I'm going to try to weave all of those things together today. I love when different workshops and presentations are interactive. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to have a little bit of a discussion and some interaction throughout these different topics, either in the chat or by y'all kind of sharing. So if you are able to turn your video on, I hope that you will, because it's always nice to see faces and kind of who's there and how you're reacting and what's kind of resonating with you. So I'm going to start out today just sharing a little bit about me and my journey and what I do. And then we'll spend more of that time talking about these different topics of art and creativity and mindfulness and self-awareness and self-care. So, and in that time, we're going to do some art as well. And don't worry, no one needs to be an art major or have even created art in a long time. Most of the people that I work with haven't touched an art material in years. So there's no expectation there. So don't get too stressed about it. So I'm going to share my screen, give you a little bit of another visual besides me to look at. And let me just organize my screen and everything up here so I can still see y'all. All right. So this is my contact information. So I'm always happy to be a resource for anybody, or if you have any follow-up questions, my email is paige@scheinbergconsulting.com, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Positive Art with Paige. So I love being a resource for people, especially because, as I'll share, there's not many art therapists around. So if that's something you're interested in or think someone might be, then I'm always happy to talk about it. All right. So, with all of these topics we're going to talk about today, there is an art therapist and psychologist that kind of brings these efforts together, these practices in our lives together, and calls them an enriched life. So, this is us working towards living an enriched life. And Dr. Lisa Hines, this art therapist and psychologist, says that by living an enriched life, you will feel exceptional and demonstrate excellence in all that you do, becoming a confident role model who provides inspiration and motivation for others to live their best lives. So, being a part of a student leadership program, I thought that this quote just really resonated with what I can imagine y'all are striving for. And knowing excellence is not perfection, but it's in fact, a practice of working towards ways of living and acting from a place of purpose and mindfulness, and not only taking care of other people or trying to lead, but in doing so, you have to really make an effort to take care of yourself and get to know yourself really well. And that has been a really big part of my journey in becoming an art therapist and realizing that's what I wanted to do, and also working from this place of an enriched life and excellence in a field that so few people are familiar with. So, just to tell you a little bit about myself, like I said, I'm from Memphis. I grew up here and then actually ended up moving to Canada for college for about 5 years, and working there for a little bit. And during that time, I was studying visual arts and design. And as soon as I was able, I moved back to Memphis because I was really passionate about coming back here and becoming part of the community and being near family. And so I worked for an advertising agency for a number of years. And during that time, I started really connecting with these interests of mindfulness and yoga. And this was a really big part of learning about who I was and what I was passionate about, and realized that I really missed connecting with people. As a art director and designer at an advertising agency, you tend to be on a computer for most of your days. And so I really miss people, connecting with the clients. And I really wanted to help people more through art and through the work that I was doing. And so I learned about this field of art therapy from my mom, who is a nurse, and left Memphis again to go back to school. And I went to Eastern Virginia Medical School, which has a small art therapy program in the community, and really valued being able to be in such a clinical environment for a field that um, can go a lot of different ways. It can be more in that you can work in educational settings, you can work in medical settings, you can work in community settings. But being at a medical school really helped me ground into these clinical mental health skill set and work environments, to then be able to know I could come out and work anywhere. So after that, I lived in Atlanta for a little while because there are more art therapists there than in Memphis, and you have to do some postgraduate work in order to get your credential. And this can be a big challenge for art therapists, because you have to have a certain number of hours working with people, and if there's not a ton of job opportunities, you've got to really be creative and be resilient and persevere in order to get those hours that you need. So I thought Atlanta would be a better place for me to be able to do that. And as soon as I got my credential, I moved back to Memphis. And the way that I was able to move back to Memphis was that I had met an art therapist right when I was starting to think about becoming an art therapist, and found ways to stay connected with her. And so I really recommend that when you find people that are doing what you think you're passionate about, or you are discovering they have something that is really inspiring to you or motivates you, try to stay connected with them. So she was doing work at the Brooks Museum, and I would send her articles that I'd see or things that I was studying in grad school, anytime that it seemed to relate to what her interests were, just to stay connected. So find ways to stay connected. I maybe send her an email a couple of times a year, but I really tried to nourish that relationship and find ways to find connections between us. So when I moved back to Memphis, she was stepping away from the Brooks Museum. And so I started working with them, and have done a lot of work to build more understanding about art therapy through that program, as well as work that I do at West Cancer Center. So in both of those places, I've helped build programs and helped lead the efforts in not only helping people within those organizations learn about what I do, but also help them feel more connected to it. So a big lesson I've learned in that is to be really mindful about language that I use, to figure out how does someone connect to what I'm saying, and then have another language in order to, really help them connect with what I'm saying. So, so a lot of my work has been connecting with these two places, and then connecting with people out in the Memphis community, and finding ways that I could be a leader in a field where there's only two of us now in Memphis, registered art therapists or board certified art therapists. So sometimes I realize that whether or not I am going for it, I've ended up in a leadership position, or ended up in a kind of pioneering position in this. I've gotten involved in legislative work to help promote and advance the field of art therapy. And I am not a very political or governmentally minded person. But I've learned a lot about writing legislation and getting sponsors and going to the Capitol. And that's been a big part of my life since I moved back to Memphis about 6 years ago. So again, you might feel like you're not able to use all of the skills that you have as a leader, or you might feel like you haven't developed all of them, but remembering that each of your life experiences are really going to kind of build up to preparing you to do what you're doing. So that's been a big, like I said, a big part of my life, an unexpected part of my life, in addition to building a business and building these art therapy programs. So like I was saying, I was before, what helped me realize that I really wanted to become an art therapist and make a career change was that I was practicing yoga and meditation and mindfulness, and realized a lot about who I was and what was important to me, and also where I found energy. You know, some days work would feel really draining, and it got to be more and more of that. And so I had to do a lot of personal work to figure out, you know, what drives me, what are my strengths, what gives me energy, and what's important to me. And so bringing together this kind of creativity and this element of mindfulness and increasing self-awareness through these practices is where I think I found, you know, my purpose, my reason I'm here and doing something that I love. So it wasn't the thing, you know, I didn't really know anything about art therapy, but it was the other things I was doing in my life that helped me find that way. So let's see. So today we're going to, again, just try to integrate these things together a little bit more, but we're going to hop into doing some art real quick. Does anyone have any initial questions about anything I've shared? So art therapy, just in summary, in case you're interested, I mentioned it's a mental health field, and you go to graduate school, you do a lot of supervision and self work in order to be able to help other people. So whether your field is a helping profession like mine, or whether you're going into business or finance, I think it's really important to do this self exploration. All right, so let's see. We're going to do something called a scribble drawing. So go ahead and get out some materials, and whatever you have at your desk, I want you to choose one color. So if all you have is a pen, you grab that pen. If you've got some colored pencils or crayons, grab one color of that. And when you've got it, hold it up in your video if you're able. If you have it up, there you go. I can see that you've got some materials and smiling faces. All right, good to see y'all. Okay, so what you're gonna do is I want you to take a nice deep breath and hold your arm up in the air. And I want you to imagine kind of scribbling in the air to get started. So I know it might seem a little silly or ridiculous. It's all right. We're all doing it together. All right. So even if you don't have a pen in your hand, go ahead and pretend like you do. Okay. And switch hands. Take a nice deep breath. And then we're gonna scribble in the air. And so do some different shapes, do some different lines. You can play around with this. If you're in public, don't worry about it. People have done weirder things in public. All right, so go ahead, put your hand to your paper with either hand. You can draw with your left hand or your right hand, whether you write with either one. You're gonna scribble freely for about 30 seconds on your paper. So scribble freely on your paper. You scribbled in the air, now we're gonna scribble on the paper. So give it a try. You cannot do this wrong, I promise. All right, so start coming to a stopping place with that when you're ready. Okay. So put your material down on your table, and I want you to hold up your piece, you looking at it. So turn it around. If it's, yeah, there you go. You look at it and hold it up and turn it, just kind of looking at the lines and shapes that are there, both that the color of your paper create, or the color of your marker or pen or crayon made, as well as the shapes or forms that the white of the paper makes. So just kind of noticing what you see, if there's an area that stands out to you. All right, so now I want you to put your paper back down and use any of the colors or materials that you have to further develop your scribble for about 3 to 4 minutes. So further develop it. If you saw shapes that you want to further develop, go for it. If you're inspired to scribble more, go for that. If you're inspired to write something or create something over it or around it, whatever you're inspired to do, develop it in that way, and know again that there's no right or wrong way to do this. If you have any questions or concerns, just pop in the chat and let us know. And notice as you're creating, notice your breath. Make sure you are breathing. A lot of times when I'm focusing, I start to hold my breath and it kind of makes it harder. So notice your breath, maybe seeing if you can even incorporate your breath into your creative process. Maybe breathing in one shape and exhaling out in the other. So let that be a part of your creative process. So we'll take just a couple more minutes, knowing you don't have to be finished. Maybe this is something you're going to be inspired to come back to, but that you just want to get to a comfortable stopping place. And so as you start finding your stopping place, I want you to hold your piece up again and look at it and just kind of reflect on what your process was like, starting with some breathing and movement, scribbling freely on the paper, then looking at it, noticing, considering it in different perspectives, in different ways, different spaces, and then developing it. What color did you start with? What form did you start with? Where did it take you? And as you're reflecting, I want you to create a title for your piece, which you can write on the front or the back. So, what are you going to call this piece of art that you've created today? And also write the date in your name. So, today is October 30th. So, title, name, and date. Okay. And so there's a handful of us that are on video. So we're gonna have the benefit of seeing each other's artwork. Okay. So if you feel comfortable, I want you to hold your piece up and just take a look at it, see what people did with scribbling. Notice all the different lines and shapes, colors and forms, sizes and materials, knowing truly there was no right or wrong way to do this, and being inspired by people bringing it um, to their present moment and making it their own. So awesome. Thank y'all so much. Okay, so I'm curious what that was like for you. Um, if you could either put a word in the chat, or if you want to talk to our group along with me, you can share this way as well. So what was this like for you? So I see free, stressful, calming, claiming, very relaxing, healing. Was anyone surprised by it? And if so, like what surprised you?
I can share. I usually don't do things like this, like art therapy, I guess. Usually, the creative outlet that I use is writing. So I thought it was really cool to do it this way because you can kind of see like your feelings represented just in a picture and not really in words. Still
Yeah.
makes sense to you, like even though it's not written in words.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the great benefits of visual arts is that, sometimes we're going through things or we're discovering things about ourselves and we're not quite sure how to put it into words yet. But we're able to play with it or explore it or just kind of let it come out through line and shape and color. And it's interesting to hear that your medium is usually writing, and that you felt like you still connected to the visual language as well. Yeah, thank you. I
Something that
can't Oh, sorry. I was just going to say I can't see people's names, so I'm connecting with your face.
something
Okay.
that
Yeah.
surprised me was whenever you reminded us to breathe, because then I realized that I wasn't breathing. So it
Mhm.
was a good chance to kind of take the time and like actually focus on that as well as the colors and what was going on the paper.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. So allowing this awareness of breath to be part of your focus, in the process. Yeah, thank you. I also see Lucy said the ability to ignore everything else going on and focus on the scribble. So that's really important to notice. If there's something that helps turn your mind off, during times of stress or overwhelmed or just life in general, sometimes it's hard to turn your mind off. And so that can be really helpful. Thank you, Lucy. Enjoyed, someone else said they enjoyed the breathing and the motions as well, and surprised how my mind found so many patterns and shapes in a chaotic scribble. Yes, so this is making me think about, the benefits of something like this. So focusing, connecting mind and body, relieving, stress, anxiety, maybe improving mood a little bit. Cause I heard it was, y'all were saying it was healing, it was calming, it was relaxing. And also, if you're able to make something out of seemingly nothing or seemingly chaos, how that might contribute to, discovering strengths or realizing in life sometimes maybe we feel like we've got nothing or things are crazy and it's hard to kind of focus in and feel like there's a change happening or you're making progress, but it's one little thing at a time, right? So these are, some of the benefits and things that are helpful with this art directive. So working with an art therapist, like in a therapeutic relationship, that would be art therapy. Doing art when it feels, calming and relaxing and you can connect to it or learn something about yourself or express something, that would be like therapeutic for you, right? So a little bit different of what's art therapy and what's kind of doing art for self-reflection or for healing or knowing if you need someone to help guide you through it or hold the space for you, that's when you would want to work with an art therapist or do art therapy. All right, any final thoughts or questions about this scribble drawing? All right, if anything comes, I see 2 thumbs up, thank you. If anything else comes to you, please again chime in or put something in the chat. Sometimes I encourage you to come back to the scribble drawing later because you might see something different or you might be inspired to continue working with it. Okay, so we're gonna move along here. I've got some different things planned, but we'll see where we're at with time too. Okay, so bringing art and creativity together, I think, is a really important mind practice and shift. I think a lot of times people think that if you don't consider yourself artistic, like you do visual arts like painting or drawing, or you are a writer or you dance or play music, you're not artistic. And so I want to make the argument that everyone, in fact, is artistic and creative. And that this comes in many different forms. So what does creativity mean to y'all? I'm going to come back here so we're not distracted by the other stuff, but what is creativity to you?
I think I sort of have a halfway answer to that. I'm big in the music scene, so when I think of creativity, first thing that comes to mind is songwriting. So maybe if you want to take that a step further, musical songwriting would be taking your interpretation of a certain order of notes and then creating that into something kind of out of your head that you think sounds nice, and then that in turn will develop into a song, and you can write words out of your head. So I think it's just kind of taking things that you have seen in the world or you've experienced and organizing them into something, into a product, and then kind of calling that creativity. But that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I love that description. And hearing the process of what happens, I think really breaks down what creativity is as well, And so you're saying your final product would be a song or a piece of music. And doing that, I'm hearing it takes kind of imagination, it takes some self-awareness of noticing what is going on around you so that then you can kind of integrate it into ways of thinking, and even some problem solving was in there, I think, because if you're building something or making something or trying to explain something or tell a story, you've got that critical thinking and that problem solving to go with that imagination and creative process. So I want to emphasize here that problem solving happens outside of the arts. Creative thinking happens outside of the arts. Critical thinking has to happen outside of the arts. And so these are all parts of creativity. And if you look at some business journals and information coming out, you'll see that, in fact, a lot of companies are saying creativity is one of the number one, if not the first thing they're looking for in people. employees and leaders and people coming into their organizations, because we want to work with people. We want people to lead who are able to think outside of the box, but also do that problem solving and critical thinking. So this happens in visual arts. It happens like he was describing in music, but it happens everywhere else. It happens in math and science and business, in medical fields, everywhere. So let's see what else. Creativity could be almost anything. It could be mixing ranch and ketchup for the first time. Yes, absolutely. So sometimes we just get these kind of sparks of random inspiration, and you're like, I'm going to do something I've never done before. And it could be a small thing like mixing ranch and ketchup, or it could be, trying something new like a scribble drawing today. So I love that. And also we realize how it can pop up anywhere in your days or your lives. And that's a big part of, my passion is helping people connect to art and creativity and mindfulness in a way that they feel like they can weave into their lives. I want you to feel like you can practice mindfulness or practice creativity, practice self-care, anytime you feel like you need it. So it could be noticing your breath, or letting your breath integrate to work with taking a step in as you walk down a hallway, or mixing ranch and ketchup. This is going to be great. Okay, so we have art and creativity. So I'm gonna connect it a little more to the arts, because now we've seen everyone can create art. You did a scribble drawing today. So self-expression is a huge, really huge benefit and part of the creative process, and something I think we're always working on. Everyone's working on trying to find ways to share what they're going through to help connect to people. And the cool thing about visual arts to me is that it's a neat way to get your conscious, like what's happening consciousness with you, but also the unconscious. So art, the symbols you see that come out of a scribble drawing, maybe have some deeper meaning, and you can hang out with them for a while and explore and see how it might have to do with something going on with you or what it might mean. Storytelling. So self-expression is a form of communication. It's a way to kind of communicate to yourself, but maybe to other people. And so that can be really important and a really incredible way to be able to connect with people no matter what you're doing. Whether it's in a relationship, or you're sharing about something you're really passionate about, or you're writing a paper, there's ways to integrate this creativity and storytelling into it. Strength. So something that I love about my work is that people are doing, right? You are creating, you're using materials, and in seeing someone in action, you will inevitably discover strengths about them. So I think it's a really wonderful and powerful way to discover things about yourself through the creative process, and noticing them is really important. So we're going to come back to this when we get to mindfulness. And reflecting. I think sometimes we go through things in life, or we are going through things, and we need to kind of sit down and figure out like what's running through my head, or why my body feels so tense. And so the arts and creativity can really give us a way to connect and reflect and learn about ourselves. So these are also benefits, of course, of art and creativity. And there's so many approaches to them. Again, I can't emphasize that enough. It could be art, it could be dance, it could be writing, it could be cooking, it could be gardening, it could be just so many so many things. If you come up with an idea about another form of creativity, include that in the chat so that we can put that into all of our mindset and daily awareness. Okay, so let's go to mindfulness. What does this word mean to y'all? This is a word that I'm hearing more and more and more. I'm curious if y'all are as well. And I think it's really important to figure out what it is so that we can use it and practice it.
I think the easiest way to sum it up, there's a quote by Ram Dass, which is just be here now.
Mm-hmm.
around us. But just being able to separate from whatever's going on and just be with yourself and follow your breath and pay attention to what's going on in your head.
Yeah, beautiful. Be here now. I see understanding and being in the present moment. Beautiful.
I
Any
think
other? Yep.
so I always tune in at the wrong time. I think it's taking this idea of being open-minded with almost a sensation of being in tune with your body and with what's going on around you, and
Mm-hmm.
playing into that and really like taking the action that you feel like you need to take, like because of what's going on around you.
Yeah, beautiful. And so when you bring up this idea of kind of openness and taking in, I'm gonna combine this with the be here now. We're integrating an element of non-judgment and kindness, right? So mindfulness is, being in the present moment, paying attention on purpose without judgment, and I'm going to add with kindness and maybe some curiosity. I think that kind of honors that word of openness and connection as well. And so how do we do this? What does a mindfulness practice look like? Do you have to be like sitting on the floor really still and quiet to be mindful, or even to meditate?
Of course, the most popular is that. I think because of like Buddhist Zen meditation and things like that.
Mhm.
But I mean, it can just be in any everyday moment, just taking the time to, just be aware and follow the breath.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so I think a lot of times when people, like you were saying, we picture meditation or mindfulness, we picture someone like sitting on the floor, maybe on a pillow with their legs crossed and their hands on their thighs and quiet, and you need to be there for about 30 minutes to an hour. And so I think this is a really beautiful formal practice of meditation and mindfulness, but it can be any moment of your day, or you can make an activity more mindful or meditative as well. So really paying attention, noticing like what's happening, and what is happening could be a thought, it could be an emotion, it could be a sensation in the body. Sensation being like, if I'm gonna kind of tune into the moment, one of my most helpful ways of doing that is checking in with the sensations of the breath. So feeling the rise and fall of my chest or belly with each inhale or exhale, or maybe hearing the sound of my breath. We call that an anchor, and the anchor is what brings us into the present moment. That helps us focus. And so finding whatever your anchor is so important and so helpful for you to find yourself in the moment, no matter what you're doing. If you're walking, if you're driving, if you're cooking, if you're studying, if you're presenting, whatever you might be doing, this is how you find yourself in the present moment. And then what you do with that is a big part of the mindfulness practice as well. Maybe realizing, what do I need in this moment, as you connect with your breath and your body and what's happening. And so this kind of takes it into a mindfulness practice that I have kind of been going deeper into, which is a mindful self-compassion practice. And so this is really helpful in that you're checking into the present moment, you're practicing that non-judgment and kindness, and you're also kind of finding a way to connect yourself to common humanity. I am not alone in this. There are other people who feel this way too, because sometimes the challenges we're going through, one of the hardest things is to feel alone in it, to feel like no one else has ever experienced this before, or no one else is right now. They don't understand. And so if we can kind of talk to ourselves through this compassionate, kind voice, then we can kind of comfort ourselves by knowing not only this isn't a wrong or right way to feel or think, but that I'm not alone in this, and all humans are, imperfect or have experienced this, something challenging like this before. So mindful self-compassion, I think, is really helpful and is a beautiful practice to also weave into your days. Let's see. So through this, again, the benefits, can y'all imagine what some of the benefits would be? As you're thinking about that, Sydney shared another practice could be 5 to 10 minutes a day of writing in a gratitude journal. That's a beautiful practice and has also been found to be one of the most ways to improve well-being and connect to more positive emotions. So doing it every day or even doing it 3 to 5 times a week has been found to be really effective and helpful. Okay, benefits of what would it be like to incorporate this into your days, into your life? How would you benefit from it? Or if you have been, what has been your benefit?
I think that one of the biggest benefits is probably just how self-aware you can get when you take that time to sit down and understand what you're feeling. Because like, I know probably most of us are really busy and it's really easy to push all that stuff down because it's not really important right now.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing what's going on actually helps you work a little bit better.
Yeah, it gives you space to find a way to release it or figure out, how you can get help or support or what you need. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Holden put in the chat, he said that some of the benefits is that you become more level-headed and also you're able to approach stressful situations without letting your emotions guide you.
Yeah, beautiful. This makes me think of having this, coupling that with the self-awareness that she was sharing. We increase our ability to respond to what's happening versus react, So responding is slowing down, maybe not talking or responding so quickly or acting out in such a quick way, but it slows everything down, as he's saying, kind of level-headed, or not letting the emotions guide you. A lot of times our emotions are what cause us to kind of react or impulsively react to what's happening. And so if we slow down, then we can kind of thoughtfully respond or even kind of wait to respond and see how that is helpful to you as well as maybe the situation you're in. I've also found that responding feels a lot less overwhelming either in the moment or afterwards when I'm trying to work through what I did when I reacted. It gives this peace of mind and it really enhances relationships and connections to people. Sydney is also saying that it gives her a more positive start to the day and helps me realize that although I may be going through a hard time, there's still a lot in my life going right. Yes. And so the more we do these practices, the more our brain actually kind of rewires to see the good. Our brain is naturally formed in a way that we see more negative out of kind of the survival mechanisms that we needed in the past. But when we breathe, when we connect our mind and body, it really helps us to be able to increasingly connect to the positive or connect to the self in a more clear and meaningful way. So I really appreciate that. It's kind of this broaden and build theory where once you start to bring the positivity or these practices into your life, they broaden and they build, so it gets wider and wider and wider. So that's a really helpful way of thinking about it for sure. Okay, we're getting close to the end, so I'm going to speed through this. I really want to emphasize that the more you do this, it is an act of self-care. And so I think sometimes self-care feels like this other thing to do, right? It's this thing on the list that we just don't have time for. Y'all are busy. Many of you are in school, you have jobs, you have family responsibilities. There's so much happening. But if we can take a minute here or there, even 30 seconds to connect with our breath, this act of mindfulness, of self-care, of creativity, sometimes it takes creativity to figure out like how I'm going to do this mindfulness today, right? If we can find these little moments in our days, it's going to really improve the way that we not only understand ourselves, but also function in the world. And it helps us, like we were saying before, it really helps us to figure out when we need support and kind of what is it that we need. If we know what's going on with our body and our mind, and we become more aware of emotions and have more control because of the clarity that we're experiencing, then we're going to be able to show up and be more engaged and live that enriched life that we are talking about. A big part of this, again, is giving these practices attention and value in your lives, in your days. Mindfulness and meditation teacher I had said, you know, one of the biggest things, and this is I hear in my work all the time, people say I don't have time, right? But he's saying, look, if you're awake for 16 hours a day and you're going for 16 hours a day and you never have enough time to get to what you need to do. Imagine if you spent 5 minutes or 1 minute or 5 minutes or 20 minutes practicing mindfulness, practicing meditation. It's as if you kind of add time to your day because you're functioning at such a higher level. You're more aware, you're more focused. You often develop more confidence and understanding of who you are. And so it really integrates so much into all of the areas of your life. And one thing I brought up were these strengths. And I want y'all to know there is a specific language of strengths that can be really helpful in cultivating and practicing and bringing to these practices. And so this is a language of strengths that I work with a lot. It's called the VIA 24 character strengths. If you Google that, you can take a free assessment to figure out what your strengths are. And it's really a beautiful way of understanding what you're naturally good at, as well as what comes kind of what you've already cultivated in your strengths and in your leadership styles, but also what you are interested in cultivating, knowing that the strengths that are kind of towards the end of your list are not weaknesses, but they are parts of yourself that you are still working on building. And so the more mindful we can be of noticing the strengths and knowing about them, and the more creative we can be with using them and cultivating them, the easier life is going to be. The easier things are going to happen, or the more resilient that you're going to be able to find yourself. So I really hope that y'all will go look this up. So coming back to this quote that we started with by Dr. Lisa Hines, you know, she was saying, by living an enriched life, you will feel exceptional and demonstrate excellence in all that you do, becoming a confident role model who provides inspiration and motivation for others to live their best lives. She goes on to say that you'll have higher levels of happiness, lower levels of stress and anxiety, and be invested in giving and receiving in relationships and community, which leads to increased meaning and purpose in your life. So, you know, my hope again is for you to feel like you can integrate and be inspired and be curious about some of these ways that you can live an enriched life, and know that it's a practice. You know, we're all just really trying to practice it and find ways to make our days a little easier and a little calmer, and life a little more enjoyable as well as meaningful. So we've got a few minutes for some questions. I'm going to put a resources slide on here. So if there's things that I was talking about you're interested in, hopefully these will take you there. And then I put a couple of my favorite Memphis kind of leadership and connecting organizations as well. So if you have any questions, we've got a couple minutes. Feel free to put it in the chat or speak up. Oh, I see you're talking, but I think you're muted. There's a bike in your background. Yep. Can you unmute yourself? All right.
Paige, I noticed I really like your presentation because I connected with you because you like yoga, and I also had a great experience taking yoga at the university last semester. And when you first mentioned mindfulness, I thought of motionless sitting, and someone said you don't necessarily have, it's not necessarily true. And I pointed to my bike. I feel meditative, and I think there's like mindfulness, it is being aware. And I think being healthy is like one thing. There's so many details I can go into, but what comes to mind is if you're like similar as to a painting today, like runners, like not listening to music is very powerful. It's safe too. And that's how I feel meditative on my bike. It's and really the question I want to ask is, you said connect, and I love that word too. And like what does connect mean to you? Like what makes you use that word so much?
I think a big part of my work is helping people connect to whatever kind of practice I'm in kind of introducing to them, and ultimately connecting it to their life. And so I'm not necessarily in the practice of having a straight line of connection, but knowing that I want you to find your way with it, and doing whatever I can to kind of ask questions and help people find it themselves. And so I think connection is a windy road and kind of a fun road if you let it be. And the more we find connection to people or things or practices, then the more kind of authentic I have felt living, in my different roles and practices. Thank you.
So Paige, I was going to ask, because I was interested, and I don't think we ever talked about it. So you talked about going to medical school for art therapy. And I feel like a lot of people don't know that that's something that you can go to medical school for. You hear a lot about people going to be surgeons and everything. So how is that testing like getting into like a program for art therapy?
Yeah, good question. So I went to a medical school for art therapy, but you don't have to go to medical school. So the testing to get into a graduate, so I should say a lot of medical schools have a lot of a variety of programs. So it could be becoming a physician's assistant, it could be going into public health, but it also could be, of course, becoming an MD or even psychiatrists are also MDs. Yeah. So a variety of programs. To become an art therapist, most programs require graduate testing, so the exam to get into grad school. But some programs don't, because they're finding that it's not predictive. It doesn't predict how people perform. And then after you graduate is when you will do about 2 to 4 years of work, and then can take another exam to become board certified. So it's similar in a lot of other clinical professions in that you're going to graduate school for 2 to 4 years, and then you're doing postgraduate work, and then you're taking an exam to get your advanced credential. Thank you.
That's really interesting. Okay, does anybody else have any questions before we finish up? If you want to stay on another minute and maybe ask Paige a couple questions that you may not be able to fit in the 1 hour block, that's totally fine. But if nobody else has any questions, you are free to go if you would like. But obviously, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat if you're not comfortable unmuting your mic and asking.
Yeah, and thank y'all so much for being here. I've enjoyed your comments and just seeing your engagement and facial expressions as well. The best way we can connect on Zoom.
Yeah, we